Once again I saw Felix's secretary sitting on his lap, feeding him drinks. This time I didn't, as before, grab her hair and drive her away. Nor did I hysterically argue with Felix. After all, the live comments had told me the family was on the brink of bankruptcy. Losing the identity of Felix's wife, I no longer had any protection. I turned away calmly as if I hadn't seen, and before leaving even asked him, "Will you be back tonight? I made soup for you." Felix's brothers burst into laughter, praising him one after another. Felix really knows how to handle things, looks like even spoiled Chloe has learned to behave. He smashed the cup in his hand on the floor, his face darkening. "Laugh your heads off." I caught Felix cheating again. This time it was right on the scene. Stella, sitting on his lap, parted her lips in a surprised, seductive little gasp. Just like the wine in the glass she held, gently swaying and catching the dim light. It flashed, a little blinding. Felix's gaze froze for a moment, then he leaned back into the sofa. He didn't withdraw the hand that rested lightly on Stella's waist. He looked up at me with a mocking smile, the deep set of his brow felt oppressive. "Stalking me again? Chloe, haven't you made enough of a fuss yet?" All sorts of eyes were fixed on me, waiting to see me throw a fit and cause a scene, just like before. Too bad for them, they were disappointed. I just stared blankly at the barrage of comments flashing by. Here it comes, the classic moment, the supporting females about to grab the heroine by the hair and slap her. Haha, the male lead will finally see her true colors and break things off with her for good. If she weren't so dramatic, how could the male lead stand by and watch Chloe's father's bankrupt conglomerate collapse? In the end her dad jumped off a building, her mother died of grief, and that spoilt heiress wound up raving and homeless. Serves her right. Drama queens always get what's coming to them. I've hated that arrogant Tianlong girl forever. Even though I already knew my ending long ago, in this moment I couldn't help but tremble slightly. This is Felix. When he loves you, he can put everything at your feet. When he grows to hate you, he shows no mercy. I once thought there was some affection between us. I never expected he could go this far for Stella. I can't provoke him. At least not now. I suppressed the bitterness in my chest, hastily turned my gaze away as if I hadn't seen anything, unwilling to reveal the emotions in my eyes. "You're imagining things. I was just passing by." The private room fell utterly silent, everyone turned to look at me with astonished eyes. Felix included. He froze for a moment, then a mocking smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. He seemed certain I was playing some kind of trick. A painful tightness pressed at my chest. I pressed my fingertips into my palm, trying to use the faint sting to ground myself. I turned and walked toward the door as if nothing had happened. Before I left, I even remembered to ask, "Will you be back tonight? I simmered your favorite soup." He paused, then added, "It's fine if you don't come back, you're busy." Behind the closed door, a burst of laughter suddenly erupted. "Felix, how did you do it? Has little firecracker Chloe finally become a good wife and mother? Hey, do you guys remember how, back then, any woman who even spoke to Felix would have her mood ruined for half a day? I can hardly believe that was Chloe a moment ago. You don't understand, women are all like that. Felix has just spoiled her too much. Use a little pressure on her and she'll behave." There was a crack, as if glass had been smashed. Felix's repressed voice came through the crack in the door. "What laugh? Are you all just bored to death or what?" Since inheriting the family business, Felix had become the aloof, noble CEO. He hadn't cursed like that in a long time. He was angry. I thought, perhaps my appearance had bruised his pride. Felix and I have been childhood sweethearts. We came from families of equal standing and were equally good-looking, a couple unanimously recognized by everyone. The summer after we graduated high school, he asked me to meet him on the mountaintop. We watched a meteor shower the likes of which only comes around once in decades. Beneath a sky full of starlight, he kissed my lips. I lay against his chest, my breath uneven, and with a spoiled yet possessive pout I declared, "I don't care." From now on, besides your daughter and me, you are not allowed to flirt with any other woman. Love is selfish, exclusive, monopolizing. I resented every woman who approached Felix with ill intent. I didn't think there was anything wrong with that. Felix smiled and nodded. At that time, he would teasingly scratch the bridge of my nose. With your explosive temper, what would you do without me? But later, he stood in front of Stella, and the way he looked at me was full of contempt and coldness. Chloe, have some shame. Do you know you look like a crazy woman right now? Every time I think of these moments, it's like a heavy, wet towel pressing against my heart without leaving a gap. But none of that matters. My family is on the brink of bankruptcy, and my time as a rich heiress is coming to an end. Compared to fretting over whether Felix loves me, it's far more terrifying to imagine my family ruined, everyone dead or scattered, and myself destitute on the streets. When I got home, I sat on the sofa and stared blankly for a long time. The night deepened bit by bit. As I suspected, Felix did not come back. After thinking it over, I took out my phone and sent a message. Thanks for tonight, but something came up and I can't make it. Let's reschedule. Soon, the rich wife on the other end sent back some politely hollow pleasantries. I knew she wanted to watch my downfall. That was why she had deliberately given me the wrong private room address, so I could see Felix and Stella's tryst with my own eyes. The old me would have proudly and disdainfully exposed her hypocritical mask. Until the day I saw the truth in the live chat. My father's conglomerate was on the verge of a cash flow collapse. The banks refused to lend any more. It looked like we were about to be left with no help from any side. The father who had always seemed able to catch me no longer existed. He now wore a face full of worry, his hair having gone much whiter. Our family can no longer be your safety net, and may even become a burden to you. Chloe, your father has failed you. My mother sighed as well. The once lustrous face had become like an old piece of cotton washed until it wrinkled. It's just as well you've already married Felix. From now on, don't be willful anymore. Live well with Felix. I felt both bewildered and terrified. All the fretting over gains and losses, all the torments of love, it was all gone. In that moment, I was clearer-headed than I had ever been. I no longer had the right to be willful. Whether as the rich wife of a bank president or toward Felix. The dream was a mess. I came to in a daze and daylight had already come. I turned over instinctively. The other side of the bed showed no sign anyone had slept there. But when I went downstairs, I found Felix sitting at the dining table. When he saw me, his eyes seemed to flicker. He naturally stood up and pulled out a chair. Come sit. Gone was yesterday's indifference, gone was the resentment between us. It felt as calm as if everything that had happened before had been a dream. My palms clenched without thinking, and my steps faltered for a moment before I walked over. We sat facing each other. It was very quiet, only the soft sound of people chewing. Just when I thought Felix wouldn't speak again, he suddenly looked at me. I went to Arthur's last night. You know, the two families have been negotiating a collaboration lately. I was momentarily stunned, then realized he was explaining himself to me. After all, at the worst point between us, he had hurled his phone down right in front of me. Checking up on me every day, what's the point? If you trust me so little, don't you think I should do something to prove myself, instead of disappointing your expectations? He slammed the door and left, not coming back all night. He fired the informant I had planted at his company, warned the girlfriends around me. Whoever dared to reveal even the slightest hint of his whereabouts would be his enemy. At that time, everyone in the circle knew I was a joke. Thinking of it, I smiled faintly. Business comes first, I understand. Isn't it just about being a well-behaved wife who doesn't stir up trouble? I can do that. Felix's hand holding the spoon seemed to pause. He suddenly remembered something and asked, by the way, what soup did you make before? I looked around the kitchen and couldn't find it. This time I froze. Yesterday's words were just an excuse I threw out casually. I had long known Felix wouldn't come back. That bowl of soup, of course, didn't need to be simmered. I looked away and tugged at the corner of my mouth. That one? Leftovers aren't healthy to eat the next day, I already threw it out. Lies are easy to tell, hard to smooth over. Felix had always been shrewd. Since I had no intention of falling out with him, I planned to leave before he could spot any more cracks. But just as I stood up, my wrist was grabbed. Felix's gaze was heavy. "Don't you have anything you want to ask me?" Before I could answer, he spoke again. There was something lodged in his throat, though. "Last night was an accident. Stella just lost her balance when she was toasting me. Even if you hadn't come, I would have pushed her aside. There's nothing between us. Don't overthink it." Felix left in heavy silence, and the live chat erupted as if the sky had turned inside out. What is the supporting female doing, playing hard to get? Such scheming. No way, does the male lead actually fall for this? I'm totally here for the pure little flower secretary and the cold, domineering CEO ship. Don't worry, a nature's a nature. The supporting female can hold herself back for a moment but not forever. One day she'll lose it again, and that's when the female lead will get her chance. They're overthinking it. I have no time for playing hard to get. Right now, all my energy is focused on how to save my father's conglomerate. I called the contacts in my phone one by one, asking them to meet for a meal. Responses were scarce. Most refusals came with crude, laughable excuses. Some even hinted obliquely that if I attended their drinking parties, they'd be willing to make introductions for me. Word of my father's impending bankruptcy has probably spread through the circle. And as his wife, I am clearly not valued by Felix. When someone is on the ropes, all kinds of creatures, monsters and demons alike, come crawling out. I pressed my forehead in bewilderment, not knowing what to do, when my phone suddenly rang. "Chloe, did you tell Felix something? He spread the word that he's going to invest in our group." On the phone my father's voice was no longer low and heavy, it had become buoyant and triumphant again. "Wonderful, if we can just get through this, Dad's confident he can save the company." The video of Felix being interviewed by reporters had already spread online, and he stated with certainty that the two companies would make the best of partners. The capital market reacted just as rapidly. The sagging stock of Dad's conglomerate seemed injected with a shot of adrenaline and immediately began to climb. My father chuckled, "You need to get along well with Felix. For now, don't throw any tantrums." Something felt lodged in my throat. I paused for a moment and said softly, "Dad, I understand." No matter what Felix was scheming, I understood clearly. I had to seize this opportunity tightly. I was getting ready to bring soup to Felix. The ingredients had been prepared by the nanny, the soup had been simmered by the nanny. I only added a spoonful of salt just after it came off the heat. Strictly speaking, I actually can cook. Like Felix, I grew up never touching a cooking pot. Back then, abroad, Felix always complained that the hired nanny's cooking wasn't authentic enough. I secretly enrolled in a culinary course and learned for a long time. On his birthday, I got up early to go to the supermarket and buy the ingredients he liked. I made a whole table of dishes. Even now, I still remember the look in Felix's eyes. He held me, apron-clad, in his arms, ignoring the smell of cooking oil clinging to him, burying his face in the hollow of my neck. "Chloe, this is the most special birthday I've ever had. Children of wealthy families like us don't lack luxury cars or jewels, nor have we missed out on opulent banquets. What we lack is sincerity." In that moment, I was willing to put effort into Felix. Until later, when he was summoned away in the middle of the night by Stella, and I could only watch, powerless, as plate after plate of food slowly cooled, growing cold. When the glistening oil on the surface turned sickening. Only then did I suddenly realize. It didn't really matter whether I put my heart into it or not. After all, he wouldn't care. That afternoon, with my face made up just so, carrying a designer bag and holding the still-warm thermal container, I arrived at the company. Felix was nowhere to be seen. His assistant, distant yet polite, settled me onto a couch in the lounge. "Madam, the president has a meeting about a partnership. Please wait a moment." True to the people around Felix, even the way they made someone sit on a cold bench was identical. I smiled without saying anything. The assistant left, and the empty room was left with only me. Felix did that on purpose, didn't he? After all, he publicly kicked the supporting female out back then and even insisted that she wasn't allowed to see him in the future without an appointment. Think about it, it felt great. The supporting female has to make an appointment to see him, while the heroine can come without a care. Felix's love is hidden in all these double standards. What did you expect? The supporting female picked a fight with the heroine. One is fierce and overbearing, the other is delicate and tearful. If I were the male lead, I'd pick the heroine too. They were right, I really don't like Stella. Felix is wealthy and handsome, and from childhood he's never lacked women with designs on him. Only Stella makes my skin crawl. The first time I saw Stella, she was clearly just an unremarkable little secretary. The look she gave me carried a faint, almost imperceptible provocation. As if asking why I, of all people, was allowed to stand beside Felix. At first I kept thinking I was overreacting. Until several times when Felix and I were being intimate, she would call in the middle of the night, cautiously but formally checking various work details. Felix has always been demanding, of himself and of others. He doesn't like anyone intruding on his private time. But with Stella, he seemed to make an exception. I was upset and couldn't keep quiet. As an employee she can't even show that basic sense of propriety. In terms of both ability and character, she's not fit for the role. Felix just smiled, she's only a young girl, quite ambitious. If I just send her off like that, the industry will think she offended me. Don't be paranoid, with you by my side, would I still look at other women? Later, I was driving Felix's car to run an errand and found a hairpin Stella had left in the seam of the seat. In that moment it felt like biting down on a grain of grit in my rice. Both irritating and nauseating. Keeping score with another woman isn't any kind of talent. I wanted to go confront Felix. When I arrived at the company, Stella stood in front of me in a strictly professional way. She said Felix was in a very important meeting and asked me to wait. As a woman used to high society, I'm well aware of keeping business and personal matters separate. Even if I had strong feelings, I shouldn't hold up the important work. It wasn't just Felix's effort on the line, but the hard work of many people at the company. I couldn't be bothered to say a word to Stella. I sat down calmly and set the cup of tea she handed me aside to cool. But after I'd sat on the cold bench for 2 hours, I discovered that Felix wasn't at some meeting at all. He was right there in his office, perfectly fine. Felix's face was extremely ugly, while Stella's eyes were red as she explained, "I'm sorry, ma'am, I've been too busy lately and mixed up the president's schedule. It's all my fault." I almost laughed with anger and looked at Felix coolly, "Either you fire her right now, or we go our separate ways." Felix didn't fire Stella, he had his reasons. Stella's family is poor. Her mother has uremia and has to undergo dialysis several times a week. If I cut off her livelihood, I'd be cutting off her mother's life. He held me in his arms, soothing me in a gentle voice. "Chloe, I'll transfer her to another department. The group is massive, thousands of employees. We won't even run into each other after this." Felix's mother died of illness when he was very young. It was the only regret of his life. I knew that although he was reassuring me, he'd already made up his mind. A little chill crept into the bottom of my heart. But after so many years with Felix, I wasn't willing to give up that easily. I closed my eyes and still agreed to him. Perhaps he was right. They were worlds apart to begin with. If they never saw each other, they'd gradually drift apart. I just hadn't expected that someone determined to see you would find a way no matter what. That day I opened the office door and saw Stella in a fitted suit skirt, half squatting on the floor, tying Felix's shoelaces. Her lithe body wrapped in the snug sheath of the skirt held a peculiar allure. In Felix's lowered eyes I saw him moved. The fury of betrayal consumed my reason. I slapped Stella, and didn't spare Felix either. Stella clutched her face and ran out of the office crying. That evening, when Felix came home, he looked at me with a gaze that felt utterly foreign. Stella has already resigned, are you satisfied now? Pushing her into quitting with gossip and whispers, you're good at that, Chloe. When did you become like this? The colder my heart grew, the harsher my words became. I was like a wounded hedgehog, instinctively bristling with sharp quills to strike back. If you hadn't done such shameless things, why would people talk? Can you honestly say you didn't soften toward her? Didn't you yield to her at every turn? Felix, do you even remember you're married? Being two-timed with another woman, don't you feel sickened by it? Felix avoided my gaze, his face turning ice cold. You're completely unreasonable. We had a huge fight. He stormed out the door and didn't come back all night. Later, though we reconciled, his repeated betrayals made it impossible for me to trust him again. I began checking Felix's phone, bribed informants at his company, shadowing his movements. Knowing full well I was in the wrong, I couldn't stop myself. I thought that tightening the rope in my hands would keep our marriage from careening out of control again. Felix could no longer endure it. He forbade me from going to the company, paraded Stella into the house. He turned me, his wife, into a complete laughingstock. It clearly happened only a few months ago. Yet now that I think about it, it feels like a past life. The pulled-away version of me has become clearer than ever. I saw through Stella's cautious probing. I saw Felix's retreat and indulgence. I also saw my own countless mistakes. I had turned myself into someone unrecognizable, all in a desperate attempt to cling to a love that had gone rotten. But no matter how much you reheat spoiled food, it's still spoiled. Forcing it down only disgusts yourself. Thankfully, I'm not that stupid anymore. Suddenly there was a noise outside, a group of men in suits clustered around Felix as he walked out. Stella was mixed in among them. She wore a tailored white suit, a costly designer bag looped over her wrist, which made her nails look that much more refined. Now she was composed and confident, every gesture and movement carrying the bearing of an elite. It dawned on me, Felix's partner was her. Of course, Stella was no longer that unremarkable little secretary. Felix had placed her in Arthur's company, and she had become an executive who could stand on her own. Good friends help arrange things for the ones they care about, it was just a casual favor. The two of them seemed to be having a pleasant conversation, though I couldn't tell what they were talking about. One lifted her head, the other lowered his gaze, everywhere there was an ineffable rapport. All of it stopped abruptly when Felix's eyes met mine. His body froze abruptly, and a flicker of panic actually showed on his face. Chloe, when did you get here? If you came, why didn't you tell me? His sullen gaze flicked to the assistant, eyes full of scrutiny and accusation. The assistant's face stiffened. Just as he was about to speak, I smiled and cut in. I was the one who told them not to tell you, work comes first, I understand. Chloe. I smiled faintly and handed him the thermos. I made you fresh soup again, but it's gone cold now. Tell your secretary to heat it up later. I won't keep you, you two can talk. Before leaving, I ignored the rigid Felix and looked calmly at Stella, whose eyes flickered. As if she were just another ordinary staff member. Stella, the dress is nice, and the bag is lovely too, it suits you. I didn't go home, I found a place to change into another outfit and went to the golf club. The man standing on the lawn squinted when he saw me. You came to see me, aren't you afraid that petty Felix will get angry? Silas was Felix's nemesis. The two of them had disliked each other since childhood and had challenged each other to countless fights. The most dangerous showdown was when they agreed to race on the winding mountain road atop Yangming Mountain. By the time I rushed over, all I could hear was a piercing roar echoing between the cliffs. On the other side was a sheer 100-foot precipice. When Felix got out of the car, I went limp all over. I walked over and slapped him across the face, then collapsed into his arms and sobbed, "Have you ever thought about what I'd do if something happened to you?" 18-year-old Felix was at the age when appearances mattered most. Yet there he was, wearing that bright red palm print and holding me, coaxing me without stop. It's my fault. If Chloe still can't get over it, slap me again? One on the left, one on the right, perfectly symmetrical. Of course I couldn't get over it. I turned and shouted at Silas, who was standing there stunned and watching us, "If you want to die, go do it yourself. No need to drag others along." Silas sneered and, just like that, walked away as if nothing mattered. From then on, he never provoked Felix again. Back then I was hot-headed and spoke without thinking. I felt the sky was big and I was the second most important thing in it, afraid of offending no one. But debts owed must be repaid. Now Silas is the CEO of an investment firm. And I am still trying to find a way out for a family at the end of its rope. He is him, I'm me, we were never connected to begin with. I pursed my lips, smiling with a mix of respect and restraint, and handed over the documents in my hand. "This is the information from my dad's group regarding the Greentown project. Could you spare a moment to take a look? You shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket." Although Felix said he would inject capital, who knows when he might suddenly change his mind. Dad's faltering conglomerate can't take any more shocks. I have to add another layer of protection. Silas didn't answer and said nothing, he just watched me in silence, his thoughts unreadable. After a long while he suddenly turned and said, "Chloe, do you still remember your dream?" "Dreams? Of course I remember. Since childhood my dream had been to become a wedding dress designer, to wear a gown I designed myself and marry Felix. For a while I actually thought the dream had come true. A lavish wedding, a trailing gown, and that expensive ring Felix slipped onto my ring finger. I wanted to bring that good fortune to more girls. I longed for them to wear the dresses I designed, to walk into marriage, to step toward happiness. But when my family hit crisis, the support I thought I had crumbled. I realized then that the so-called dream was nothing but a joke. I said softly, "You must be joking. Dreams are for children to talk about, people grow up." I didn't expect Silas to agree right away. He and Felix don't get along, and he has even less attachment to me. But business is business. Even if Father Group's great ship is leaking, it still has a few rivets left. I could always produce benefits that would move him. When I came home that evening, Felix, who was usually out late, had actually come back early. He seemed to have something to say, several times opening his mouth and then closing it. But I was just too exhausted, dealing with Silas had drained every last brain cell I had. I simply didn't have the energy to deal with him anymore. It wasn't until just before sleep that Felix suddenly handed me a cup of warm milk. "If I don't keep an eye on you, you don't know how to take care of yourself. Drink it, you'll sleep more peacefully tonight." When I was studying abroad, I once developed insomnia from the pressure of my coursework. Felix was studying in another city at the time. By the time he discovered I'd been taking sleeping pills regularly, a month had already passed. He lost his temper in a way he never had before. He threw all those medicine bottles away and even took me to see a doctor. For a while, he drove tens of kilometers every day, worrying, to keep me company. At night he would make me a cup of warm milk and lull me to sleep. Later, my condition improved, but the habit stayed. Even after we were married there was no exception. Seeing me staring blankly at the cup of milk, Felix raised an eyebrow and smiled. "What, you want me to tell you a story to put you to sleep?" I took it calmly and drank it down in one go. In Felix's stunned gaze, I said softly, "No need. You're so busy, you don't have to trouble yourself with that. Besides, milk stopped working for me a long time ago." During those restless nights, I lay awake until dawn, night after night. Later I understood. It turned out I didn't need anyone to soothe me to sleep, I could fall asleep on my own. I learned to take care of myself. Not for anyone else. Just for myself. I turned onto my side and fell asleep. I don't know how long passed before a warm body leaned against me. Felix's deep voice reverberated through the room. "Chloe, what happened today was just an accident. I didn't know Arthur would send Stella to talk to me about a collaboration. I've already asked them to assign a different contact. Stella and I really aren't what you think." The man's arm tightened around my waist bit by bit, his stubbled jaw gently brushing against the hollow of my neck. "As for that careless assistant, I've already transferred him. From now on, let's live well together, okay? But no sooner had he finished speaking than his phone buzzed. The special ringtone was one he'd set just for Stella. Felix froze. I didn't turn around, I merely curled a wry smile in the dark. From that day on, Felix really did stop going out for business dinners. He came home early every day after work. He even reported to me what he ate each day and what he'd done. Felix also truly seemed to have cut off contact with Stella. Once she called me in the middle of the night sobbing, Felix answered in a voice as cold as ice, "Don't call anymore. You know you can't afford the price for angering me." At the time, I just buried my face deep in the pillow and pretended not to hear. Until the day Felix came back from the auction with a sapphire necklace worth hundreds of millions. When the necklace lay against my neck, I touched the icy gemstone and secretly calculated that if I sold it, it might cover some of the losses at Dad's conglomerate. To reward him, I cooked another pot of soup. Felix stared at the steaming bowl in his hands for a long time, took a sip, and then knit his brows slightly. I asked, "Is it a bit salty?" It was indeed salty. When I took it off the heat, I had forgotten the housekeeper had already added salt. I lowered my eyes. "It's my poor cooking. If you don't like it, don't drink it." He hurriedly picked up the bowl and drained it in one go. "I like it. As long as you made it, I like it." In the end, the whole pot of soup went into Felix's stomach. He barely slept all night, getting up over and over to drink water because he was so thirsty. News that Felix had spent a fortune for love spread, and with the steady progress of the partnership between our two families, my father's group stock climbed further. Even the rich wives in our circle were praising my ability to keep a husband. "You're really good at this, looks like your man has truly settled down. No matter how fragrant the flowers outside, they can't compare to the one at home who knows the roots. Men just crave novelty, once the thrill fades, they'll come back." I only smiled and said nothing. Talk of home flowers or wild ones didn't matter to me. These recent meetings with Silas, however, made me feel him slowly loosening up. I had a hunch that the day we reached an agreement might not be far off. That thought made me a little excited. Until that day, when Felix slammed a few photos down in front of me. From certain angles, Silas and I were laughing together, our poses ambiguous. There was even one where I had accidentally twisted my ankle and Silas was affectionately draping his arm around my shoulders. The one who took these photos was probably Stella. After all, it was she who sent me the photo of Princess Felix carrying a drunk woman into the car. Felix's chest heaved violently, and the whites of his eyes flashed red as he demanded, "Chloe, shouldn't you give me an explanation?" I scoffed inwardly. Men are like that, even when they no longer love you. If they find something they consider theirs coveted by someone else, they take it as a provocation. But I didn't yet have the standing to fall out with Felix. I stepped forward and wrapped my arms around his waist, returning to him the words he had once said. "It's my fault, I know I was wrong. There really was nothing between us, believe me." Felix carried me upstairs and pressed me down on the bed. I struggled for a moment. He would not let me refuse, locking my wrists. As if wanting to dismantle me bone by bone and devour me, he kissed me deeper. Felix was handsome, kept up a regular exercise routine for years, and a clear layer of muscles covered his chest and abdomen. He even paid attentive attention to every one of my preferences. When he was in a good mood, he would lavishly flatter me. If you don't speak of love or hatred, having someone like him as a bed companion is actually a blessing. I stopped resisting and let myself sink with him. In the final moments, the sound of his breath exploded in my ear. "Chloe, let's have a child." After the clouds cleared and the rain stopped, Felix held me and we fell into a deep sleep. But I lay awake alone in the quiet darkness. Felix doesn't know. We once did have a child. I learned of his existence at the worst point in our relationship. Almost every time we met, it ended in an argument. After so many fights, he simply stopped coming back. Felix has so many houses, he can lodge himself wherever. He stopped answering my calls, showed up at business events with Stella, appeared at gatherings with friends. And I was trapped inside this villa. Waking up crying every day, falling asleep still in tears, living like neither human nor ghost. If it weren't for an invitation from an overseas fashion week, I don't know how long I would have let myself stay trapped. I just didn't expect that a chance trip would almost turn into an air disaster. When the plane bucked through the clouds, the passengers around me pale with fear, some even beginning to pray, I regretted it. I regret that my relationship with Felix ended so shabbily because of a woman like Stella. Maybe I shouldn't have been so stubborn. Maybe I should have begged Felix to reconcile sooner. None of this would have happened. So when the plane finally landed safely, the first thing I did was call Felix. I wanted to tell him that we should make up, pretend the past never happened. I called many times with no answer. In the end it was Stella's voice on the line. "Chloe, Felix is busy. Is there something you need?" Her tone was full of confidence and flamboyance, even tinged with a faint showiness. All of this was the courage Felix had given her. The phone suddenly felt like it had grown thorns, and I abruptly hung up. I avoided listening to another word. That night I tossed and turned and couldn't sleep, and finally woke in a burst of agonizing pain. When the ambulance took me to the hospital, the doctor regretfully told me, "I'm very sorry, the child probably can't be saved. You've experienced great joy and great sorrow, and you've lived in terror for so long. The child who had just made a home inside you couldn't withstand so much turmoil." I didn't speak, I just tremulously touched my lower abdomen. It felt chilly there, as if a hole had been torn open. By the time I walked out after the operation, it was already dawn. Just as I turned the corridor, I saw Felix huddled against Stella. She pressed her forehead to his chest and sobbed softly. The man's hand slowly patted her back, soothing her in a gentle voice. In that moment a thought crossed my mind. Every child should be the product of love. But there was no love left between Felix and me. That's why he would reject us, I supposed. Fine, then I don't want Felix anymore. But fate had other plans. The divorce papers were just drafted and I hadn't had time to give them to Felix when I learned that my father was about to go bankrupt. Maybe it was my tact that pleased Felix. When he was generous, he could be generous to the core. Designer bags, jewelry, he piled them in front of me as if they cost nothing. He even bought 2 villas and put them in my name. I used to sneer at such gold and silver. Now I found the weight of money far more tangible than the elusive notion of love. To secure the money, I decided to sell off everything I could convert to cash and wired it all into the account I had in a Swiss bank. On the day the two companies formally began their partnership, there was a reception. Felix seemed pleased, he drank a lot. When we got home, I helped the slightly intoxicated him to bed. Then I went into the bathroom and waited for everything to quietly ferment. 10 minutes later, just as I had expected, he knocked on the door holding that abortion procedure form. Felix's voice trembled, veins standing out on his neck. "What's going on? Why have you never told me?" I said nothing, only looked at him bitterly. The tear I had so carefully prepared slipped from my eye and fell. Watching Chloe in front of him break down and sob, Felix's heart felt as if it were being ripped apart. He couldn't understand how everything had come to this. He thought of that day. Back then he had felt hollow because Chloe had suddenly left for abroad. Stella called him in tears, saying her mother was gravely ill. He went to the hospital and saw the woman lying on the bed, barely clinging to life, and Stella, overcome with grief. The scene reminded him of himself as a child. So when Stella leaned in, he did not refuse. What he could not have imagined was that at the same time Chloe was enduring such desperate agony. She had their child. And in such a resolute way, she had lost him. Just thinking about it felt like someone was repeatedly stabbing his heart with a needle. Felix pulled Chloe into his arms with force, not sure whether he was comforting her or comforting himself. "It's okay, it will all pass." He and Chloe still had a long future ahead of them. And he would spend the rest of his life making amends. Maybe it was out of guilt, or maybe for some other reason. Felix went against everyone and transferred part of the shares into my name. Even when I said I wanted to learn business from him, he only paused for a moment. Will this make you happy? As long as it makes you happy, I can agree to anything. Felix really was a good teacher. He taught me how to spot business opportunities amid a flood of information, how to weigh pros and cons, and how to negotiate with rivals. I used exactly what he taught me to reach an agreement with Silas. On the day the contract was signed, Silas looked at me with a complicated expression. I never thought you'd go down this path. I always assumed you hated these filthy lucre things the most. I raised an eyebrow. Money is the foundation of life, how could it be filthy? Silas paused for a moment, then suddenly laughed out loud. What do you think Felix would do if he knew our two families had joined forces? I thought about it, it would probably be spectacular. After all, Silas had always been his nemesis, a few photos could make him fly into a rage. But none of that was my concern. Although the contract had been signed, there were still some details to iron out, so the two companies decided to hold the press conference 5 days later. That day happened to be my birthday. And another birthday gift was the revised divorce agreement I had my lawyer draw up. When I put the divorce agreement in front of Felix, he was enthusiastically planning how to celebrate my birthday. I booked the Mountaintop Starlit restaurant, it's the place in City A that's closest to the sky. His voice was full of nostalgia, we can go there to watch the stars, just like before, okay? But I don't have time. The press conference is about to start, I have to rush to the venue. And not just now, I won't have time anymore in the future either. I shook my head. Felix, let's get a divorce. In that instant, it felt as if all of Felix's emotions had suddenly drained away. His expression froze, his eyes fixed immovably on me. After a long while he said, Chloe, what did you say? I had to repeat myself, I said, let's get a divorce. Starting today, I'm setting you free. Felix sprang to his feet, set me free? I don't need freedom. Didn't we agree we'd take care of each other from now on? He took a step forward, trying to grab my hand. Chloe, you were lying to me just now, weren't you? I pulled my hand away from his, picked up the bag set aside. If there's anything in the divorce agreement you aren't satisfied with, notify my lawyer. As I reached the door, Felix's voice came from behind again. Where are you going? To attend Silas's press conference? I turned back, somewhat surprised. So he already knew. Red rimmed at the corners of his eyes, his voice trembling, Chloe, I'm not stupid. I was only trying to fool myself. So, you're divorcing me because of Silas? Fine, he'll never understand. I've said everything that needed to be said. I laughed mockingly, think whatever you like. I moved out of the villa, but Felix refused to divorce me. He wouldn't even see a lawyer, only agreed to meet me in person. I went, the place he chose was the Starry Sky restaurant he had mentioned. When I arrived, he seemed to have been sitting there for a long time. He hadn't done anything, just stared blankly at the countless stars overhead. Do you remember the day I confessed to you? There were that many stars then, too. I pretended to be calm, but you don't know how long I secretly prepared. When I kissed your lips, my heart felt like it was going to explode. In that moment I thought, we'll surely be together forever. Felix looked at me, his face shadowed by an inescapable sorrow. Chloe, how did we end up like this? Was it because of Stella? But I never felt anything for her, all my sympathy for her was simply because we both have seriously ill mothers. He seemed to realize something all at once, his complexion paled a few shades. Or, because of that child? I know I was wrong, terribly wrong, but I'm already changing. After all these years between us, isn't that worth giving me one more chance? Felix, approaching 30, was still handsome, but the ardor of youth was gone from his brow. I think I'll never forget that 18-year-old boy who once held me tightly in his arms. He declared to me, both immature and imperious, starting today, I, Felix, am Chloe's boyfriend. I will only dote on you alone, everything I promise you I will do, every word I say to you is sincere. If anyone bullies you, I'll be the first to come to your aid. Felix will love Chloe forever and ever. The memory snapped back. In the empty night I lifted a smile that had no warmth. When I was little, my mother once gave me a piggy bank. I would always fill it to the brim. Later, I stopped putting money in and instead made a little hole at the bottom and took it out bit by bit. But no matter how much you save, there will always come a day when it's emptied. I looked at Felix steadily. Now, between the two of us, there's only this empty jar left. All the affection had been drained dry, pulled out in one disappointment after another. I took a document from my bag, set it on the table, and tapped it. This is top-secret material about your conglomerate. If it gets leaked, I fear your company's stock will take a huge hit. Felix suddenly pressed his hand to his forehead and laughed. He laughed so loudly, and yet a tear slipped out between his fingers. Chloe, you've become so cold. His voice was hoarse, laced with an unavoidable tremor. It's my fault. I taught you how to be ruthless. After the divorce, I officially took over my father's corporation. I became very busy. Busy running the company, busy flying around the world to negotiate deals. The social circle in City A is only so big. No matter how much I tried to avoid him, I still ran into Felix a few times. Once was outside a business cocktail party. I saw Stella, looking disheveled, blocking Felix's way. Felix, I know I was wrong. As long as you can forgive me, I'll do anything. But you can't be this cruel to me. If you push me to the point where I can't make a living in this city, what will happen to my mother? She's still lying in the hospital waiting for me to save her. Felix showed no emotion. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly saw me being ushered into the car by the crowd. His feet shifted, but before he could come over, I was already seated and the car sped away. In the rearview mirror was Felix standing silently. And Stella, wailing in despair. Later, at a client's invitation, I attended a drinking gathering. When I was leaving, that handsome, pleasant male attendant suddenly chased after me. He stood before me, hesitating and stammering, but before he could speak, hands grabbed his arms from both sides. On one side was Silas, who loved a spectacle and couldn't stay out of it. On the other was Felix, his eyes dark and brooding. The waiter stared in astonishment at the bizarre scene, and in the end could only give me pleading puppy eyes. I was too lazy to respond and walked out on my own. As for Felix and Silas, these two men, who to outsiders were untouchable titans, started fighting right there in front of everyone. The whole episode was even posted online by entertainment reporters. Two powerful family heads, both domineering CEOs, rage over a common man. The story trended and became the latest joke in the circle. The last time I saw Felix was during the first month Silas and I were dating. Back then he had pestered me for a long time before I finally agreed to go on a vacation to Hawaii with him. On the cool beach, I lay back in a chair enjoying a rare vacation. Silas, of all things, was wearing a tight black turtleneck base layer and prowling back and forth in front of me. I was getting impatient and turned my head, only to see Felix staring at us a short distance away. Before I could look again, his eyes were suddenly covered by a pair of knuckled hands. What's so interesting about that dirty thing? If you want to look, look at me. Don't I have abs? Don't I have pecs? Everyone online says when a man dresses like this, any woman can't resist. I've been trying so hard to flirt with you. Does your womanly heart have to be made of stone? The more Silas spoke, the more aggrieved he sounded, and he went on to dredge up old grievances. Back then, to work with you I dressed like a peacock every day, constantly changing outfits. To meet you I even stretched the schedule out a bit. And what did I get? You didn't have me in your eyes at all. I laughed helplessly, but Silas grew even angrier. You're still laughing? I actually had a dream last night. I dreamed you were left with nowhere to go, stranded on the street, and I took you home. You were so obedient then, you agreed to everything I said. It must be because you've neglected me for too long that I had such a ridiculous dream. Chloe, you. I grabbed his collar, tilted my head, and kissed his nagging lips. Shut up, you talk far too much.